Hi, everybody. I am excited to see you guys again today. I found another true story. I love these books. This is Kate Shelley and the Midnight Express, a 3.3 accelerated reading level book. And let's get started. It is a great little story. It reminds me, it's in the same series as the one we read about the Pony Express. So this is the Midnight Express. Here's a little note by the author about Catherine Kelly Shelley, or Kate, was born in Ireland on September 25th, 1865. Before she was 1 year old, her parents brought her to America. They bought a small farm near the town of McGuinna, Iowa. Kate's father built a house overlooking Honey Creek, within sight of the Chicago and Northwestern Railroad line, and farmed the land. He also took a job with the railroad. After Kate, there were 4 more children: James, Mame, Margaret, and John. Life in the Shelleys' isolated cottage was hard but satisfying, full of good friends and good times. Then, when Kate was 13, her father died. Less than a year later, 10-year-old James drowned in the Des Moines River. Mrs. Shelley never really recovered from these tragedies. Kate took over more and more responsibility for running the farm and caring for the younger children. When a raging storm hit the Des Moines River Valley and lives hung in the balance, Kate did not hesitate to face danger and go out alone into the night to do what she believed was her duty. Let's see if we can zoom in just a little bit. All right. Here's the story. McGuinna, Iowa, July 6th, 1881. 15-year-old Kate Shelley pulled the sheets from the line. A terrible storm was coming. Kate could feel it in the air. A cold wind rose as she carried the heavy basket back to the house. Black clouds rolled in. The sky grew darker. Kate stood at the kitchen window with her younger sister and brother. They saw lightning flash. They heard thunder crack in the hills. Then the rain came. As the rain poured down, they watched the water rising in Honey Creek. Soon it overflowed its bank and flooded part of the yard. "I'm going to let the animals out of the barn," Kate said. "If the water keeps rising, they could drown." "Be careful you don't slip in the water," her mother warned. Kate ran down the hill. She waded through muddy water to the barn. She let out the 2 horses and shooed them off to higher ground. She drove the cows up the hill. Then she hurried back to the barn. She picked up some piglets and carried them to the house. By the time she was soaked to the skin, Kate put on dry clothes and went back to the window. The rain had not let up. The flood water was coming closer to the house. When lightning flashed, Kate could see the shining railroad tracks that ran along the other side of Honey Creek. Kate peered through the rain, trying to see the railroad bridge over Honey Creek. How was it holding up to this storm? After supper, the younger children went to bed. 9-year-old Mame wanted to stay awake with her mother and Kate. They sat at the kitchen table, talking about the danger of the storm. They were worried about the men out working on the railroad. At midnight, an express train would pass the McGuinna station without stopping. It would cross the long bridge over the Des Moines River. Then it would cross the bridge over the Honey Creek near Kate's house. Were the bridges safe? Shortly after 11 o'clock, Kate and her mother heard an engine chugging slowly down the tracks. Railroad men were checking the tracks and bridges before the express came through. They were heading towards the bridge over Honey Creek. Suddenly, the engine bell rang wildly. Then Kate heard a terrible crack. She knew at once the bridge had broken. Kate heard the hot engine hiss as it hit the cold water. She jumped to her feet. "Oh, Mother," she cried. They're going down into Honey Creek. I must go for help." The crash woke the children. They watched silently as Kate pulled on a jacket and an old straw hat. Then she lit her father's railroad lantern. "You can't go, Kate," her mother said. "It's too dangerous." "I have to go, Mother," Kate answered. "Someone may still be alive in Honey Creek, and I have to stop the Midnight Express." "Please, Kate," her mother cried, "don't go. The floodwaters are almost to our door. If that were if that were father down there, wouldn't we want someone to help him?" asked Kate. "You're right," her mother agreed. "Go ahead then. But be careful. We will be praying for you." Kate could not cross the flooded yard to get to the broken bridge. Instead, she started up the path behind her house. She would reach the tracks where they ran through the hills. Water poured down the hillside. Kate climbed over fallen trees. Her skirt caught in wet brambles. Her shoes sank in mud, but she held her father's lantern before her and she kept going. At last, she reached the tracks. Kate ran along the tracks back to the broken bridge. She looked out over the dark waters of Honey Creek. She could not see the engine or any of the crew. Had all of them drowned? Then Kate thought she heard a shout. In the roar of the storm, she was not sure. She listened again. Yes, somebody was calling. Lightning flashed. Kate saw someone holding on to the branches of the treetop just above the water. Thunder boomed. As it faded, Kate heard voices calling again. She could hear two men's voices now, but she couldn't make out their words. Above the howl of the storm, "Hang on! Hang on!" Kate shouted. "I will get help!" Kate swung the lantern back and forth. Now the men would know she had heard them and was going for help. Kate began to run towards the McGoyne station. There wasn't much time. She had to get to the station before midnight, before the express. Kate ran along the tracks. Even before she reached the Des Moines River Bridge, she could hear the rush of floodwater. She held up her lantern to light her way over the bridge, but as she did, a fierce wind blew out the lantern's small flame. Kate stared into the darkness. To reach the Des Moines station, she had to cross this river. The long wooden bridge stretched before her. Beside the track was a narrow walkway. Some of its boards were missing. There was no handrail to hold onto. Kate was afraid to cross this bridge even in the daylight. Could she do it now in the storm of the dark? Kate thought of the men in Honey Creek. She thought of all the people on the train speeding towards the broken bridge. She got down on her hands and knees and began to crawl across. Kate felt for gaps in the walkway so she would not fall through. Nails and splinters cut her hands and knees and tore her skirt. She gripped the steel rail of the tracks to keep the wind from sweeping her over the side. Trees and logs of the flooded river crashed against the bridge, making it shake. When she reached the middle of the bridge, great flashes of lightning suddenly lit the night. She looked up. A huge tree was coming down the river straight towards her. Surely it would crash through the bridge. Kate closed her eyes and prayed. In the next moment, the river pulled the tree down under the water. Kate felt the tree scrape beneath the walkway. Then it was gone. Kate was shaking with fear, but she could not stop to rest. She knew it must be almost midnight. She had to reach the station before the midnight express. At last, Kate's hand touched the land. She had crossed the river. The McGoyne station was less than a half a mile ahead. She got to her feet and began to run. Her heart pounded, her throat ached. But through the rain, she saw the light of the station. Kate threw open the station door. The men inside turned and stared. Kate's clothes were torn and muddy. Water dripped from her old straw hat. She tried to speak, but no words came. At last, she gasped, "The engine went down in Honey Creek. Stop the express." Then she sagged to the floor. "The girl must be crazy," someone said. But the station agent knew Kate. "She means a bridge is out," he shouted. "We must stop the express." He rushed to the telegraph and tapped out the message to Ogden, the station before McGoyne. "Stop express. Bridge out. Stop express." Another man grabbed a lantern. Then he ran out to the platform. He would flag down the express if the telegraph message was too late to the express. With 200 people aboard, it was still speeding towards the broken bridge. But Kate's warning had come on time. Railroad men stopped the train at Ogden. It was the last telegraph message sent. or received that night. The storm knocked out the telegraph service for 40 miles along the line. Someone helped Kate to a chair. Someone gave her a glass of water. 2 men are still alive in Honey Creek, Kate said. I saw them holding onto trees in the water. Let's try to save them before they're washed away, a man said. Would you help us, Kate? Another man asked. Would you show us where they are? Kate rode the engine with the rescue party. They crossed the Des Moines River on the same bridge Kate had crawled over. The engine stopped at the broken bridge on Honey Creek. Everyone shouted, and the men in the water answered. They were still hanging on, but there was no way to reach them from that side of the flooded creek. Kate led the rescue party into the hills behind her house. She led them through the woods to a bridge further upstream. There they crossed Honey Creek, and at last they rescued the 2 exhausted men. Kate went home and slept for a long time. When she awoke, her family, friends, and neighbors greeted her happily. They wanted to hear about her adventure. Reporters came. Newspapers across the country told the story of her bravery. Soon the whole nation knew about Kate Shelley. The railroad company gave Kate $100 and a lifetime pass on the railroad. Poems and songs were written in her honor. The state of Iowa awarded her a gold medal. But of all the honors given to Kate, she liked the one from her railroad friends the best. Whenever she rode the train home, they stopped to let her off right in front of her own house. The end.